decided I am now officially... I'm not completely done, I still have to do a bit of fiddling with the animation. Whew. Yeah, I previously wanted to call this different. I had a different name in the beginning, but I realized, no, that's actually something I have already tried. Only with fewer skills. But since then I have also met other people who inspired me to also push my creative toolbox a little, and that's just me saying in the beginning that local connections are more important than all this faraway stuff. Because if your forest is being cut down, then the only people who will truly feel this are the people who have already spent time in this forest. And that's a situation we are facing currently. Right, I'm living in one of the few still relatively green areas, of the populated world, basically. And it's really sad to see how everything is just going down somebody's chimney. And so my work is clearly about nature. And so this making of is not really going to be a making of where I tell you exactly what I did in what scene. I'm simply going to talk about what I did, and the video is going to be random stuff that I recorded with OBS Studio. And the only reason I name the tools I use is because we're living in a time of artificial intelligence, which isn't really intelligence because it's got no intel. Because intel is something you have if you are connected to the mind that we may call whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can connect yourself to the Gaian mind, and then you've got intel because you can hear things that happen elsewhere. And that's why also the story, I just want to talk a bit about the story. It's about you leave something behind, but the voices will follow. Why do the voices follow? Well, don't treat them like they're bad, right? If anyone who's gotten into meditation, if you have never heard voices, congratulations, then you're probably the only being without a shadow or something. Well, I hear lots of things, and the challenge is to simply keep going and to not let yourself be distracted overly much. So my idea is I've got a certain skill set and I can work with that skill set. But for me it would be not really interesting to just try and copy other people. Okay, this is the second attempt for the making of video. Okay, what you're gonna get here is simply me having recorded myself via OBS Studio while working on some of the scenes that you can see. These recordings aren't complete. I haven't had... Okay, I finally got to the point. Alright. I can say, welcome. This is the making of Shamanic Handbook, Part 1 or Episode 1. Demonic presence. There's an old version out there, but that was simply too simple, and I made it 2 years ago. But this is the one I really spent hours just fiddling around. Yeah, it's my way of being creative, and that's why I use a mixture of photographs and just things I create on the computer with GIMP. The tools I used were only Kdenlive, GIMP, and Audacity, and I have been working with these tools already since the beginning of my, you could say, career as an artist. And these tools came to me. I'm using Linux Mint. The version is clearly irrelevant, and it's a very stable system. I like working with it. I have a really small laptop. It's more a laptop for writing. And just to show you a little bit what you can actually accomplish with just simple means. So for some of the scenes I still had my DLSR, but then it broke. And most of these scenes that come later are based on material I simply filmed or photographed with my phone, which is also a very simple phone. It's not this top-notch thing with a really high-definition camera, but it was enough. I realized it's enough. I just built myself a little, not like a tripod, but something I could just position my phone with. And there's also things I actually really created by hand, such as the mask, which comes a bit later in the video, but I haven't screen recorded how I did that. But it's actually a mask I'm working on up in my workshop, and it's really made of wood. I only started working with wood, maybe 2 years ago, and some time ago I made a mask for someone, and it was the first time I did that. And now this is the second one. I still have to do the mouth though. For the video I just cut the mouth out. But yeah, it's gonna have spiky teeth, because that's what life is for me. It's just a bit vicious, and I always like to keep the viciousness also in the room, just so you know, I've got a shadow, I'm not a bully, but I hold my ground. And that's also content creation. And in times like this, if you're not recording what you're doing and presenting it in some kind of a way that's just interesting enough to say, okay, he's done it, then you're really not following what is happening. People are becoming really suspicious towards anything anyone does online. So you really, as an artist, as a creator, you have to document. If you're just filming yourself, don't bother. But anything else you're doing in terms of abstraction, whether it is animation, whether it is anything else, you have to record yourself. And I already started doing this fairly early, when AI wasn't even really that popular. but so I've recorded most of my artworks, but I've stopped with the artworks. But yeah, I released them all, and now I went into animation, or what I consider to be something like animation. Only I'm not doing the full animation job. I cut myself out. I take a video of myself, and then I render this video with 12 frames per second into an image sequence. And then I just take some of the images and I simply cut myself out by hand via GIMP. And I do this with a touchpad because I don't have a mouse. And I've been doing lots of my art actually just with my touchpad. Just this touchpad of my laptop. And I like it. I mean, I really work well with this. And it also means I don't need anything extra. I mean, you could say now, yeah, okay, you're just struggling, you don't have the money. Yeah, but even if I had the money, right, I'm rather struggling. And that's an honest choice, you know, I like the struggle. You just buy nothing. Okay, you know, if I want to crochet a hat, I'll buy a wool. Right, but I'm not gonna buy gimmicks. I use what I have until it breaks, and then I have to see, okay, can I still get it to work somehow? If not, then it's just, okay, cheers. Anyway, you know, I have a background in environmental protection, and I simply know the cost of just replacing any gear too early. But yeah. Okay, so I actually don't know what to say. It's not supposed to be really long, this video. I'm probably gonna aim for 12 to 14 minutes. Just gonna check how much I say in here. So I've just done what I've done all the time. I had a topic, and it started actually almost by accident. So you could say I got together with 2 other artists and we started just pitching ideas around. And I created the falling scene for someone because he said, there's this scene and there's this character and he's supposed to fall and then somehow land in the underworld. And because we kind of felt like teamwork, since then we decided, or it just happened so that each of us just creates their own stuff. But if we really need help, right, we can ask. You know, it's like, otherwise it doesn't work. I'm too good on my own. But that's a good sign, right? It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But I realized it while trying to work together. Anyway, I had this idea, I just filmed myself making like a falling movement just in front of a green blanket that I hung up against my wall. And I just filmed myself doing this and I just took some of the frames so it looked like I'm falling. And then I created a spiral in GIMP, and then I added it to Kane Life, and then I use all kinds of effects like the rotate and shear, which has an automated rotate, so the rotation keeps going. It's keyframeable, which means you can set different rotations along the timeline. And then I just fiddled around with this until the spiral looked nice, so you just keep adding effects, and then you render it, and then you render it again, and then you layer what you rendered and render that again, and then you add vertigo effects, and then you create these, you know, these mods that you can put between each layer of video material, and then you just keep going with that until you feel like, okay, I like the spiral, now the character. And then you want the character to be kind of, so you use the D-fish effect, that he doesn't look just human. You want him to be a bit weird. That you can't see my face is also because I simply switched also in my work as an author. I switched to more abstractive works. I switched to just abstractions. And that gives me a lot more freedom to express without people saying, dumping their stuff on, oh yeah, that's that guy. No, it's just my creation. Okay, and then, I don't know, I just added lots of elements. Some of these images, they just happened randomly while I was actually doing something else, and I realized, okay, if I separate this in this prairie scene where he's walking through the ocean of voices, well, that's just an image that came out like this, and then I just mirrored it twice, and then you have a long background, and you just let the background run right over the screen, and the character just has to do his loop cycle all the time. So my idea was to do something like an animation, but I realized with everything else I'm doing, which is writing books and occasionally throwing out an album on Bandcamp, and then also just cooking for myself and keeping myself alive and training the handstand and keeping my apartment clean, I realized I don't have the time. This animation for me, okay, I can do it, it's nice, but it's not the only thing I'm doing. And that's why I had to keep things simple. And I couldn't buy anything. I had to use what I have. And it's simply a fair attempt. It may seem a bit long occasionally, but it's also supposed to... It's not supposed to be super fast. It's for people who want to start taking their time. And it's my first movie like this. It's not in that sense a movie, but it's the first really long something like an animation that I've done. And if you ever look at this previous Demonic Handbook #1, which is still on my account but it has this edition, old version, or version 2026 or something, 2024 I mean. Sorry about the confusion, I'm just going through a lot of stuff, and I'm just in the middle of releasing this, and I realized, okay, I just have to say something about the making of. Yeah, that's what I had to say about the making of. It can be worked with. I will clearly make a second episode, and probably also more, but I know I have to have the time for this. And so, as I mostly consider myself an author, I simply don't do this every day anymore. So this is something I did now. I finished it, and then I will go back to translating the Book of Fear from German into English, because I just completely refurbished the Book of Fear. But German is the original language, and now I'm translating it. And then I have already other books on the line that I have to write. And then maybe after a couple of months, I'll go back to doing something with this. Or I just do it completely different. Yes, actually, I know the idea comes, but I'm not yet completely sure. So I'll see. But there's not really much more I can say about this. Okay, good luck being creative. Do crochet, start with knitting. Right, I started with knitting, but I also do crochet. I love crocheting hats. It's very basic. Just get used to being creative in all sorts of ways. And just keep pushing your limits. It's just, right? You know, I just like putting myself out there. And I'll keep doing this for probably a very long time. And that's all I had to say on the making of Shamanic Handbook, Episode 1, Demonic Presence.